stories from around the corner
and around the country.
You're listening to All the Best.
Proudly supported by the Art Gallery of New South Wales.
This week's episode calls for us to pause and look for guidance on what is the right way forward. And I start by acknowledging that I'm recording from stolen and Gadigal land, and pay my respect to Gadigal elders past and present, and also recognize that the area where FBI Radio is situated, Redfern, has long been a place of storytelling, strength, resistance, and resilience for First Nations communities. Can you think of a time when life forced you to pause? This week, you will hear two stories where major life events have forced a kind of course correction. In our first story, Sharon is a high-achieving university student who is forced to redefine her measure of self-worth after receiving a lupus diagnosis. Here's Sharon talking about why she made this story.
The reason why I made this story is that I'm actually not someone who would document whatever is going on in my life. Like, I don't have the habit. But then I feel like getting lupus was such a pivotal and almost weirdly magical event. As in, a lot of things happened before and after my diagnosis were just as if they were arranged to teach me something. So I thought I should probably do something with it and see what I can do with my hands. I also thought that the Taiwanese Taoism temple culture, as well as the sea goddess Mazu herself, is very interesting. And I also wanted to use this piece as a chance to shout out to the people who helped me along the way.
That was Sharon Wongosari, and here's her story, Serendipity. "
信女的祈求，求妈祖娘娘慈悲怜悯，解我心中千愁百劫之苦。" Growing up, I had the habit of visiting the Mazu goddess temple. Once a sea goddess worshipped by sailors, she is now an all-encompassing figure who people turn to for career, family, or life decisions. For me and my family, the temple has been a quiet refuge, a place to give thanks and seek guidance when the path ahead feels uncertain. Last year, I had what felt like my worst semester at uni. I was juggling a part-time job, multiple extracurriculars, and some personal projects. Realistically, I should have expected that taking on way too many activities would impact the quality of everything I was doing. But because I've always tied my self-worth to my accomplishments, I thought that phrases like "take things slow" were just excuses for the lazy. At a certain point, all I could hear was this inner voice that kept telling me, "You're not doing well because you're not working hard enough." And so I prayed to Mazu. I prayed for more competence and more efficiency. I thought, if I could just be a little smarter, a little more productive, the inner voice would go away, wouldn't it? Thankfully, winter break rolled around. I was very excited preparing for my Japan exchange program and for my birthday, which falls on the day after Christmas. I flew back to Taiwan and caught up with my dorm mates back when I spent a semester in National Taiwan University. I remember that day being very chaotically fun. I treated them to dinner in a Sichuan restaurant. Since we all spoke different languages, they had this crazy idea to belt out happy birthday in 5 different languages. I was so embarrassed because everyone was looking our way. Afterwards, we had a Christmas gift exchange and visited the photo booth before parting ways. I remember that night, as I was looking through the pictures we took, I saw that my face looked unusually round. For days after, my legs started swelling too. It got to the point that I couldn't brush it off anymore. On December 31st, I finally went to the doctor, a kidney specialist. It was pouring hard outside. That very night, he told me that they found kidney malfunction, high proteinuria, and high cholesterol. This confirmed that it was lupus. At that moment, my world crumbled. 枯木可惜逢春时，如今且在暗中藏。宽心且守风霜退，还君依旧作乾坤。 I remember going to the Mazu temple with my brother on the 2nd of January. I asked Mazu if I was going to be okay. In Taoist temple culture, they have this Q&A system. That's how I'd like to describe it. You ask a question or make a request. Then you toss a pair of red crescent-shaped blocks that are flat on one side and concave on the other. If one faces up and the other one down, it means it's a yes from Mazu. On the other hand, if both the flat sides are facing up, it's a strong disapproval or her no to your question or your request. And if both concave sides are up, it means it's a playful rejection, like, ahaha, no, or even, I don't really understand your question. Please rephrase it. Then there's also a system for open-ended questions. After Mazu's approval, you can draw a wooden stick and ask her if that's the stick she wants you to take. Each stick is marked with an ancient Chinese calendar symbol that corresponds to a fortune poem, which will be interpreted to answer your question. It took me so many attempts that day to get the right wooden stick. On top of feeling sad, I remember feeling so frustrated because I got a lot of the playful rejections. I was like, why are you laughing at me? Eventually, I got my poem and went to this medium who could interpret it. He told me Mazu said I'll be enduring some of the toughest days ahead, but things would get better by summer. As part of treatment, I had to go to the hospital many times, and I had to follow a very strict medication routine. I was just swallowing pill after pill after pill. Some of them were steroids. Steroids are a funny kind of medicine with lots of side effects. They make you fatigued, but also give you insomnia. So they'd wake me up around 5 a.m. when I had to take the first batch of medicine. I feel like I was constantly on the verge of falling asleep, but the medicine wouldn't let me go to sleep. It's like I was playing this to sleep or not to sleep game with my body. By noon, an intense fatigue would kick in, and I would feel like someone just knocked me out from behind and my head was going to slam onto the table at any second. And so I'd have to stop whatever I was doing for naps again and again. Then there's the swollen face. Perhaps because of the trauma of seeing my swollen legs, this fear of gaining weight took over me. Even though I knew the main cause was the swelling, I just had this lingering urge to lose weight, and so I felt ashamed for having to eat so much. All of these symptoms may sound easy to address, but this concept balancing game that lupus creates makes addressing them all impossible. Like, yes, I can drink coffee to help with my fatigue, but I can only drink a little or else I'll end up getting muscle cramps. I can eat protein, but not too much because apparently the more I eat, the more it ends up in my urine. I can exercise to reduce the weight gain, but not for long or I'll get leg cramps and my toes will start twitching. It's like every time I try to fix one thing, another falls out of place. Apart from all these physical effects on my body, I started questioning the qualities I've been defining myself with. Like, I've always prided myself on being independent, for being able to achieve everything on my own. But now I'm suddenly this person everyone had to worry about. I remember breaking the news to my parents. They were overseas at the time. I was just crying and telling them, sorry, I messed up. My brother got cancer a few years ago, so I felt guilty for making them relive that traumatic experience. I failed my promise to take care of myself. And since lupus is incurable and can only be managed through lifelong treatment, it felt like there was nothing I could do to fix my condition. I also regretted having to cancel my Japan exchange program and giving up the scholarship I'd worked so hard for such a long time. I felt like not only did I miss out on a great opportunity, but all my efforts had been in vain. Though I'd say the worst of it all was the sense of helplessness, how I had completely lost control of everything in my life. Before then, I could plan in detail what I want to achieve in a day, a week, or even a month. I could lock in all day. I learned languages fast and was often able to learn new vocab or grammatical structures with 1 or 2 listens. But because of the meds I was taking, I'd get brain fogs. Together with the fatigue, it was impossible for me to sit down and study, and I'd find myself unable to grasp new concepts no matter how many times I tried. I was terrified I wouldn't return to my productive self, and I was becoming the very loser I was most afraid of. At those moments, I would think back to Mazu's words that things will get better by summer. But I wondered, what would a better life even look like? "于今莫作此当时，虎落平阳被犬欺。世间凡事何难定，千山万水也迟疑." During the last few visits to my doctor, he said my test results came back great. He also assured me that my cognitive impairment will get better as I wean off my medicine. Just a week before I left Taiwan, I visited the Mazu temple. I drew another fortune poem to ask if Mazu had any messages for me. Mazu suggested I should try letting things sit before accepting a new responsibility or making a significant decision. Mazu also told me to live in the present and appreciate everything that happens within the day, no matter how good or bad, and regardless of whether it serves a purpose. In hindsight, lupus isn't all bad. The brain fog actually made me more impulsive. Like, I've tried things that I would never have done before, like looking for language exchange partners on Facebook and studying in a more fun and less structured way. The fog also made it tough for me to plan things, so I was forced to live in the present. I realized, oh wow, this is what slowing down feels like. And for the first time, I was actually able to feel the things around me. Throughout my time in Taiwan, friends traveled from other cities just to see me at the hospital. I had friends and family who called and checked in on me every day. And I met the doctors and nurses who went the extra mile to help me along my recovery. Mazu has answered my calls, but in a different way. Instead of giving me the strength to take on more, like I had always wished for, she made me see how much I already have, how I was surrounded by people who loved me, how I had taken my ability to learn for granted. Just 4 days before leaving Taiwan, I was out with a friend in Beitou, when we stumbled upon Mazu's pilgrimage procession. It's this religious and cultural festival where 4 to 6 men would carry a palanquin on their shoulders, an intricately carved box structure mounted on 2 poles enclosing Mazu's figure within it. Over the course of multiple days, the palanquin would be paraded across cities and through the countryside. The spiritual marathon draws thousands of devotees each year. Wherever the palanquin goes, the streets reverberate with the steady beat of drums, the high-pitched calls of sona horns, and the blast of firecrackers, exploding at random intervals, showering the road with red scraps the size of confetti. In the pilgrimage, devotees try to perform 钻教, or the act of crawling beneath Mazu's palanquin. They do this as a way to absorb Mazu's spiritual energy, hoping it would cure illness, remove bad luck, or ensure the health of their families. Given how packed the streets get, not everyone gets a chance to perform 钻教. To this day, the sheer unlikelihood of the entire experience has stuck with me. I happened to be on that exact street where the palanquin took a turn, and even got the chance to perform 钻教, despite the massive crowd that afternoon. It felt as if Mazu herself, the goddess of the sea, was sending me off, wishing me safe travels and telling me it's time to begin a new chapter. Now, I'm ready to see where the ocean leads, where she leads, and where life will lead.
You're listening to All the Best on FBI Radio 94.5, and I'm Kwame Slasher. That story was produced by Sharon Wongosari, and the supervising producer was Dan Semo. Our next story is one from the archives, and it takes us all the way south to Antarctica. Dylin navigates their way to an understanding that there's always more life to live. And though Dylin does give a warning at the top of their story, this is just an extra warning that this story contains references to suicide, so please listen with care.
I just want to give a quick content warning that fairly early on I talk about suicide. This story was written on the lands of the Gadigal and Wongal people. I pay my respects to the traditional custodians of country right across this vast land and its surrounding islands. I acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first and original storytellers and honour the deep histories and the many yarns that have been had on these lands since time immemorial. I pay my respects to elders past and present. Sovereignty has never been ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. I'm 17 years old when I've learned what it feels like to believe your body is an unlivable place. When I learn what it feels like to be so full of dark ocean, so swollen with sadness that all you want is to open and to feel your chest explode. I'm 17 years old and in the midst of my first psychotic episode, when I take off my shoes and count how many steps it would take to obliterate my life. It's the picture of a burnt orange sunset seared forever into my memory. How the sky is so brilliant and so red, it looks as if those blackened hills are on fire. And that wide sea, clipped white by a ferocious southerly wind, how wild it all is before me. I'm 17 years old when I brush for the first time with my own mortality, crying not in the face of death, but in the face of being found, be put in an ICU with a window a nurse shines a torch through every 15 minutes just to check that I'm still painfully here. And there's something I think this does to me, to know deep in my body that this life is both precarious and finite. I become emboldened, electric in that way the air becomes laden in anticipation of a storm, as if the whole world is holding its breath, ready for the onslaught. And it's not that I haven't ever failed, because I have absolutely spectacularly. more that the risk of failure seems to crack and slip and fall away when you feel as if you have nothing to lose. Because I learned at 17 that nothing in this short life is safe, so I may as well do what I love. Because the improbability of reaching old age suddenly makes anything feel possible. And so, in the dark recesses of psych wards, I find writing, sailing, if you like, over some watery horizon into uncharted seas, where the ocean is deep and the sky feels endless. I lose myself in worlds, real and imagined, and become the author of my own story, so that everything feels swollen with promise and fully realized. Through writing, I carve out space for a future in which I want to live. I am 22 when I write to every ship I find on Google that goes to Antarctica. I tell them I want to write a book about the ice at the end of the earth. I tell them I'm a painter, and if you take me, I'll come back and have an exhibition and donate half the profits to a charity of your choice. I am met with cold silence until one email pops up in my inbox and the CEO of a travel company asks, "Do you want to come into our office in Sydney for a meeting?" Over a pot of coffee, he asked me, "Do you know what we do?" I say, "Yeah, you're a travel company that does expeditions to Antarctica." He says, "Every year we take an artist, they come back and have an exhibition and donate half the profits to a charity of our choice." He asked, "Did you know that when you wrote to us?" I think of lying, then decide not to. Shaking my head, I laugh and say, no, I didn't. He says, "Previously we've taken Wendy Sharp and last year we took Ken Doan, and well, we've never taken an emerging artist before, but since you're already here." I am 23 when I travel to the ice continent. We sleep one night on the ice, not in tents but in waterproof sleeping bags that we lie at the base of grave-like holes we've dug in the snow with shovels. It's the middle of summer, so the sky is white and washed out bright in the middle of the night. I have anticipated the profound silence. What I don't anticipate is how overwhelming that silence is. I make noises, coughing and rustling my sleeping bag just to check that my ears are still working. Eventually I fall asleep, woken in the early hours of the morning by the riotous thunder of a glacier on the other side of the bay beginning to calve. Scientists can dig down into a glacier and extract cores of ice, examining the tiny pockets of air that tell the stories of distant worlds. I like to think of glaciers as libraries of ice, as repositories of world stories. I sit up in my sleeping bag and watch in full awe and wonder as thousands of years of story crack off and descend into the sea in voluptuous surrender. I watch history come crashing full throttle into the present as these stories dissolve into the water from which all life came, the water to which we all ultimately return to. In the middle of the bay, between me and the shedding glacier, a pod of humpback whales is surfacing to breathe. I laugh out loud at the brightness of it all, thinking perhaps of how close I have been to my own ending and how in this moment my life feels as if it's just beginning. I have a great uncle named Douglas. He's 96 and a few weeks ago he moved into a nursing home after protesting years that the only way he'd leave his studio in Stanmore, with its lush garden, which he'd cultivated over many years, would be in a coffin. And when I asked him how he felt about the move, he too laughed out loud and told me, "Oh, darling, there is always more life to live."
This is All the Best on FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Kwame Slasher. That beautiful story was written and performed by Dylin Hardcastle for All the Best and Word Travels at a live storytelling night we ran in 2023. And the accompanying music was by Elizabeth Jigalin. And if that story raised any issues for you, please call Lifeline Australia at 13 11 14. If you enjoyed the live storytelling vibe of Dylan's story, All the Best have a live storytelling event coming up in collaboration with Read to Me, a community of visual storytellers. The event is called Extraordinary Tales, and it will be held in Zetland at the Green Square Library on the 12th of September. The event will be free, but tickets are limited. We'll have more details in our show notes for this episode. And if you are hungry for more storytelling, then keep listening to All the Best for unique stories from independent audio makers from so-called Sydney and around the country. Definitely catch our live broadcast on Sundays at 9:30 a.m. on FBI Radio 94.5. And we also release a brand new episode every Tuesday at 4 p.m. on allthebestradio.com, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So follow us so you never miss an episode. All the Best would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in which we make these stories and pay our respects to elders past and present. All the Best is made at FBI Radio on Gadigal land in association with SYN and 3RRR on Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung lands, and ACCC on Arrente and Warramunga lands. The All the Best executive producer is Mel Bakewell. Phoebe Adler-Ryan is our events and partnerships coordinator. Patrick McKenzie is our community coordinator. And a special shout out to some of our amazing volunteers, especially Ray, Sue, Lindsay, Andrew, Sharon, and Ash, who helped to make All the Best possible. Shining Bird composed our theme music, and Annie Hamilton designed the artwork. We're heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network, and were made possible by the Art Gallery of New South Wales and the Community Broadcasting Foundation. You can find our full archive of more than 600 episodes at allthebestradio.com. I'm Kwame Slusher. See you next week.